Hello, this is Danielle Yawowiecka with the BBC News. India has recorded its biggest daily jump in the number of coronavirus cases and fatalities. Health officials said there were nearly 4,000 new cases and about 200 deaths in the past 24 hours. The new figures were announced as India started relaxing the world's biggest lockdown, as Divya Arya in Delhi explains.
India has been appreciated for implementing a lockdown very early into the spread of the pandemic, but criticized for one of the lowest testing levels across the world. So now, as the testing levels are being increased, the numbers are also increasing. The health ministry has been asserting that the curve has been flattening. They have also said that the recovery rate is much better. But as we can now see, the deaths have suddenly started climbing up as India has started to ease its lockdown.
A BBC investigation has found that an Iranian airline accused by the US of having links to the country's Revolutionary Guards fueled the spread of the coronavirus around the Middle East. Mahan Air has been accused of flying people with coronavirus to Lebanon and Iraq, giving both countries their first officially identified cases of COVID-19. The airline has refused to comment. Here's Nawal Al-Makhafi.
We've tracked down the first official cases of COVID-19 in Iraq and Lebanon. In Lebanon, it was a 41-year-old woman who went to a pilgrimage to Iran. And in Iraq, it was a young man who was returning from his studies in Iran. And both of them were passengers on Mahan Air flights from Iran. We spoke to insiders from within Mahan Air, and they told us that by the end of February, more than 50 of the cabin crew were showing symptoms of COVID-19 and were still made to carry on working.
England is trying out a contact tracing app from today to detect and limit the spread of the coronavirus. The app registers phone users who have spent 15 minutes within 2 metres of each other. If one later tests positive for the virus, others are alerted. The Health Secretary Matt Hancock says data is stored on people's phones and not centrally.
Firstly, because the data is stored on your phone until you need to get in contact with the NHS in order to get a test. Secondly, because the purposes of this are purely and simply to control the spread of the virus, which is really important. Thirdly, because we've all had to give up significant infringements on our liberty, this approach will help us to release them.
The French government has said it will stick to its coronavirus strategy, despite reports the disease may have been present in France a month earlier than previously thought. In a statement, the Health Ministry told the BBC the strategy was in line with the current circulation of the virus and the dynamics of the epidemic. You're listening to the World News from the BBC. The United States and Britain are beginning discussions by video conference on a post-Brexit trade agreement. The UK's International Trade Secretary Liz Truss said striking a good deal would help both countries' economies to bounce back after the virus outbreak. The first round of US talks is expected to last 2 weeks. China says it's successfully launched a new generation rocket that's carrying an experimental spacecraft. The space capsule's unmanned, but it's designed to carry astronauts to the moon. It has 6 seats compared with 3 on China's current spaceship. It's been carried into orbit by a Long March 5B rocket, which is also an upgrade on what Beijing has previously used for space exploration. Some Indian states are introducing large increases in taxes on alcohol as they struggle to manage pent-up demand and also try to increase government revenues. It follows the reopening of some shops on Monday. Jill McGivering reports.
The day after alcohol became available again, prices in some states rose dramatically. In Delhi, the state government announced a new 70% tax, a special corona fee. In Andhra Pradesh, a further tax, a 50% increase, was announced. Officials want to curb demand and reduce consumption. The new taxes will also increase state revenues. Despite high prices, queues still formed early in Delhi, but customers were kept at a safe distance from each other. On Monday, some shops were forced to close after a few hours because they were overwhelmed by demand.
For the first time in more than 2 decades, the United States has appointed an ambassador to Sudan. Diplomatic relations had long been at the lower level of charge d'affaires due to the strained ties between the two nations. In the early 1990s, Sudan was added to America's state sponsors of terrorism list for harbouring Osama bin Laden. Correspondents say the appointment of an ambassador is another sign of improving relations. BBC News.